book lovers, and welcome to another edition of Authors Love Bookstores, presented to you by A Mighty Blaze. My name is Kimberly Hensle-Lowrance, and I'm your host today. I'm so excited for today's interview. We have with us internationally best-selling author, Jenna Blum, who is the spark that flames a mighty blaze. Do you like that? Spark that flames.
That's really good.
It's good.
Yeah.
Catching fire. I'm like queen of the online marketing world.
Jenna is the author of 3 novels, The Lost Family, The Storm Chasers, and Those Who Save Us. She's also in a number of anthologies, and one that's coming out this summer, Jenna, about, what's it called? Alone Together, Love, Grief, and Comfort During the Time of COVID-19. You're in that.
Yes, actually, we're going to do a cover reveal for this Sunday. Jennifer helped, who writes for Psychology Today and who is an author in her own right, solicited essays from a bunch of authors about the weird things that have happened to us during COVID and also the weird ways that we've connected that we didn't expect to connect in. So Alone Together, check out the Blaze Facebook page on Sunday and Instagram and Twitter, and it'll be on there.
Awesome. And then the anthology is coming out in July, so keep an eye out for it. Jenna is also one of Oprah's top 30 women writers and my writing teacher, so it's a delight to have you here. Thank you so much for being here. Jenna is here today to share with all of you one of her favorite independent bookstores, An Unlikely Story, based in Plainville, Massachusetts, and representing An Unlikely Story is Kim Havens, who is their marketing and events manager. Welcome, Kim. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
We're so happy to have you here.
Hey, Jenna.
So, Kim, we have viewers from all over the country who watch this series in A Mighty Blaze, and so they may not be familiar with Massachusetts geography like we are. So can you give them a sense of where An Unlikely Story is located and a little bit about the community that you're based in?
Yes, so it started, An Unlikely Story is located in Plainville, Massachusetts, which is the home of Jeff Kinney, the author of the Diary of a Wimpy Kid series. So when he moved to Massachusetts and he was choosing where to live, he basically did a Venn diagram. He wanted 2 airports. So he did Logan and Providence Airport, and his in-laws, his wife Julie's parents, live in Worcester. So if you do a Venn diagram of the 3, Plainville is right there.
Perfect.
So it's about 45 minutes from Boston and about a half an hour north of Providence. And it's pretty cool because it's right off the highway. So we're kind of uniquely situated.
Excellent. Now, as you mentioned, Diary of a Wimpy Kid is a huge series. I have many of them in my house. Is the only one I could tear away from my children's fingers. So the story is definitely a mecca for Wimpy Kids fans. Absolutely. But you carry much more than children's books. Can you talk a little bit about the store, what makes it so special, why people flock to it?
Yes. So the store, it's a brand new building, and it was on the site of Falk's Market, which was the general store where they sold penny candy. And, you know, it was just the place where everybody gathered. They gathered on the porch and everyone in town. And there's so many stories that I've heard from people, you know, oh, we would buy our meat there, and, you know, just fond memories. And so when Jeff moved to Plainville, once he hit it big with the Diary of a Wimpy Kid books, he decided to buy this then decrepit, abandoned building and make it something that he could be proud of. And so he eventually landed on building a bookstore and a cafe. He very much did not want it to be a Wimpy Kid world, but it's very whimsical. So whimsy is very important to him. There are stories in pretty much everything in the store, from the reclaimed wood floors that came from the Nutty Buddy ice cream factory to the beams on the 2nd floor that came from a tobacco warehouse in, I forget where. And he tried to get bricks from a place where Mark Twain had worked, but they weren't able to bring them up from wherever they were. So, but they're all tumbled bricks, and it's just, there are flying brooms and the snitch and flying books. And just after 5 years, it feels like it'll be 5 years tomorrow. That's our birthday.
Happy birthday.
Yay. So we're empty, but you know, we're all still here, and it's kind of nice to realize that people love our staff. You know, we have the most incredible staff, and so we're still able to build that magic with our fans and authors now from our living rooms. So but we miss it.
Yeah, I can imagine. That's the wonderful thing about bookstores. You can walk in, ask a bookseller for a recommendation, and leave with a fabulous new story. Are you able to do that over the phone if people call?
Yeah,
And you're still taking online orders even though you're closed?
we are. Well, so what happened was that the floors, even after 5 years, whatever they treated them with, they were a mess. So Jeff has been wanting to redo the floors for a long time. And our cash wrap was in a really weird place and it wasn't working for us we didn't really expect, like when Jeff interviewed me, he's like, well, so you worked at Wellesley Books. Would that a town that has 100,000 people in it? So Plainville has 8. What are you going to do one night when you're here and nobody's in the store? I'm like, well, if someone comes in, I'm going to talk to them and I'm not going to close until they're ready. And we have a great talk about books. So then, of course, it blew up after the first weekend. And so now we've built a lot of parking lots. So we have beautiful, I call them car parks because they're just beautifully landscaped. So it's became a real destination store. And so our cash wrap was not even close to being big enough. So the time that we've been closed, the floors are remodeled. Everything has been cleaned from top to bottom, everything. And we'll have a brand new cash wrap. I think it's going to be delivered next week. So we'll be brand spanking new, ready to go when we're back in action.
Terrific. And I understand you have an upper floor that's an event space.
Yes.
So I've heard about it from Jenna. Jenna, can you tell us a little bit about maybe an event that you've had and an unlikely story that was very memorable to you?
I can. And the story is beautiful. It's enchanted. I mean, Kim is talking about it from the point of view of somebody who works there and knows how the sausage is made and the floors and the stores and the shelves. But when I first got to Unlikely Story, I drove down from Plainville from Boston. It's about 45 minutes south, which means that on a Friday, it's like 4 hours south. And I was like, why is there a book spaceship in the middle of Plainville, like in the middle of a town that I had never heard of before? It was like this magical place. The event space is fantastic. Like the downstairs looks like an actual bookstore, so which is a happy place for me anyway. So I walk in and immediately I'm going to spend all of the advance for my next book, buying books, like thousands of books. But upstairs there is this event space where there's an actual stage, and Kim and her staff have hung lights down, like light bulbs down from the ceiling that look like stars. So when you do an event at An Unlikely Story as an author, you're basically sitting in this very starry looking space. And it's this magical thing. And she left out, to me, one of the most important things about the store, which is that it has a full bar and a cafe. And as a foodie and as somebody who loves to write about and eat food, like I'm basically a yellow lab and I think about food all the time, I was like, oh, Kim, I'm going to inflict myself on you for the paperback launch of The Lost Family, of my last book, and we're going to make food from the menu in your cafe. And I made her take me down into the walk-in in the kitchen so
She was the first author to see the walk-in. It was hilarious. That was the best. That was so much fun. I'd never met Jenna before, but I was dying to. Like, I felt like I knew her from social media and just reading her books. But then when she came, I was like, I want to see the kitchen. I'm like, okay, let's go.
I love a kitchen. I was like, let me into the walk-in. I'm going to go. And I freaked out in the walk-in because I'm a restaurant fanatic and worked in food service for so many years. And I'm like, it's a real walk-in in a bookstore. Like my two favorite things in one place, books and food. And apparently there's a rooftop area as well that I have yet to sample, but I'm very excited about that. Someday when you guys reopen, I will be there at your store with my theme drink.
You will.
Okay.
So one of the questions we've gotten from a lot of people watching these interviews is, what are you reading now? Because that's the thing that they're struggling with, being home during the pandemic. So Kim, what are you, as a bookseller, what are you reading? Jenna, as an author, what are you reading? I know they would love to hear that.
So yeah, I had a hard time at the beginning because I couldn't concentrate on anything. Yeah. And the books that I normally love, I had Mary Kubica's The Other Misses, and I just couldn't read it. I couldn't concentrate. I couldn't look for clues. I was just like, yeah, I'm all done. I did read David Mitchell's Utopia Avenue, which is about a band in the 60s. And that was fantastic. Like, that was good. So I found that historical fiction I could do. I read the new Louise Penny, which, Gamache is so comforting. And they were in Paris. It's in Paris, which I was just beyond. So that I actually stayed up till 6:45 in the morning reading that one. So those were probably the two standouts, but I've been reading a lot.
So historical fiction and mystery to get
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, mysteries, but not thrillers.
Mm.
No unreliable narrators. I don't have the patience.
Too much unreliable in the world.
No, my brain just can't go there. I just can't.
And Jenna, how about you? Have you discovered anything during the pandemic?
Yeah, I have discovered much during the pandemic because we started A Mighty Blaze in response to the pandemic, which connects writers who are being published in this time of quarantine with readers since they can't actually get out in person to meet them. And one of the many, many, many benefits of the Blaze is that I suddenly started receiving books from writers. So I've been reading and the books that I've received for authors that I then get to interview. So this week I'm reading Lionel Shriver's The Motion of the Body Through Space. We just had a fantastic interview with Lionel this past week. She was so nice. She was so gracious. And I love her books because they're so snarky, but they're not mean. And she has a vocabulary that would put even mine to shame. And I am a big fan of the $20 word. So I can descend into her books and really wrap myself in them. Before that, we interviewed John Irving, and I needed to brush up on my John Irving novels. So I reread A Widow for 1 year, which I loved. And then I watched The Door on the Floor. I'm going to read Unorthodox by Deborah Feldman. I read Alex George's The Paris Hours, which he was kind enough to send to me in advance of his pub date. So, I mean, I'm getting this steady influx of books now, and I absolutely love that. And every time I go to bookshop.org or I go, to a book blog, I recognize all the books that are on the featured pages, and it's so exciting to be able to give a shout out to them and then to sit and luxuriate in them while sitting on my couch with dinner.
Excellent. We're getting some questions from our viewers. And so one, Kim, is for you. Someone would like to know, is Jeff Kinney part of the day-to-day operations of the store? And what is it like to have an author run a bookstore?
It is an absolute dream. So when we first started, he has very much everything to do with the design and anything to do with, when I designed the tote bags or we got our new 5-year pin, he has a lot to do with pretty much everything. He basically taught me how to do events from the author's point of view, which I really think gave me an edge because I started out as the bookstore manager and I opened the store and I, did all that. And then once the events started going crazy, they were like, well, Kim, I want to mess things around, the manager said. So she's like, I'm going to put you in charge of events. And I'm like, okay, sure. I'd never done events before. And so, hosting like Dave Pilkey with 300 people was like, sure, okay. But he walked me through it all. He's probably one of the most patient and kind men I've ever met. He's exactly what you would hope that he would be. I would say he's very specific in his praise. He will tell you if you're doing a good job. He will be like, Kim, you hit it out of the park with this. This is fantastic. As far as being in the store, now he has 2 books a year. So he's on deadline all the time. And he's usually traveling. This is a very unique period because he's actually not traveling for the first time since he wrote the books. So he's home with his family and I'm sure this is really good. I'm sure it's a good healing time for him and his son's getting ready to go off to college. But people come in the store all the time and they're like, is Jeff here? Is Jeff here? And I'm like, I don't know. He's a ninja. He sneaks in, he sneaks out. You might catch him ordering his grilled cheese in the cafe. He might be chatting with his brother about trivia in the cafe or, he might just catch him somewhere. But it's rare these days to actually see him in the store itself.
So when you mention events, one of the things that your store has done during the pandemic is that you've pivoted to doing virtual events. So you had one last night with John Grisham.
We did.
Small event.
Yes. And that was with 5 days notice.
Whoa.
We got the email on Thursday, 5 days. And I'm like, sure. And I'm like, Jeff, what do you think? Can you do it? And he's like, sure. And his wife, is like, do you think in the future you can give him more notice because he's working? I'm like, I know, but it's John Grisham.
And then you were telling me before you have another event next week that people can join, and that's with Jeff and Kristen Bell.
We have Kristen Bell. So our very first virtual event that I hosted was with Rebecca Stead. And she, you know, I absolutely adore her. Her new book is fantastic. And it's very funny because we were born on the exact same day, the exact same year. Both had single parents. We both have 2 boys that are 2 years apart. And the first one is named Jack. And then I stopped giving her any personal information. But a lot of the people at Penguin Random House were watching it and they were really happy with it. And the next day they approached us for an event with Kristen Bell for her launch of We Need More Purple People, which, oh my gosh, Jenna, you would love this book. It is so good. So that's next Tuesday at 7 o'clock.
Okay. And if people want to attend, they can just go to your website to sign up.
To our website. Yep. And tomorrow we have Gene Yang, who writes Dragon Hoops. Yep. Graphic novelist. He'll be in discussion with, so that's more for bigger kids, in conversation with Jeff for our birthday. And that's tomorrow at 7 as well. Great. And then we have Marlo Thomas and Phil Donahue.
Wow.
What?
I know. Can you believe it? I think we just got it on the website today. I'm like, okay.
Jenna, are you going to break into song? Are we going to hear some Free to Be?
I was going to say, can I sing Free to Be You and Me? I will come in and I will sing like, there's a land that I see. Like, I grew up listening to this, of course, in my little Oshkosh overalls.
Yes. Yeah. So I'm pretty much, I texted Jeff. I'm like, this job just periodically just blows me away.
That is amazing.
So it's
these might have not been events that you could have done otherwise. So there's been
definitely not.
Odd sort of silver lining.
Yeah. Oh, most definitely. And it's just starting to pick up now.
What's the key? What's the one great? What's the key? This is the question that came in that I'm messing up. What is one key to a great bookstore author event?
So I think it's just enthusiasm, and the thing that I love, because Deb asked me when she was hinting to try to get me to take the events job, she's like, what is your favorite part of your job? And it's the authors. I love the authors. I love authors. I mean, I've adored Jenna from afar for 10 years, you know, and I get all fangirly and dorky, and I'm just a big old book nerd. And I guess I don't try to restrain it. I just kind of go with it, and it's genuine, and people pick up on that. So I think that's it. And our whole staff is the same way. And it's just wanting everybody to have fun. That's our biggest thing. We want everybody to enjoy the event. I want the audience to enjoy the event as well as the author. Like, to me, that's really important for the author to have fun with us. So that's our main goal. And if everybody has fun, then you can tell. Yeah.
Well, if you're letting Jenna Blum into your walk-in, I think
she let me into the kitchen. I want to tell like 2 stories about this, if I may. And the first is that when Kim is running, I used to be a bookstore events manager at Borders when Borders still existed, and it didn't go out of business because I was an events manager there, but it, has gone out of business. And it's hard to get people into a bookstore. The biggest crowd that we ever had when I was an events manager in Minnetonka, Minnesota, was for Richard Marx. It wasn't even for an author. And it was like Richard Marx, and there were like 400 ladies of a certain age all clutching their cassette tapes and CDs. And he came in and was like the feathered hair and the jeans. But I mean, like, that was like a thing. No, I probably did. I'll look for it. It's actually it would be on film, like from a disposable camera. So I'll find that for you, Kim, only for you. But it's hard to pull a crowd into a bookstore. And in real life, before we pivoted in the time of COVID, when I went to Kim's store, I was doing an event with Pam Jenoff, who's a dear, dear, amazing friend who we had on the Blaze. She was just starting to promote Lost Girls of Paris, and I was on the tail end of my Lost Family tour. So she and I did a lot of events together. It was winter. I was cranky. I was at the tail end of my tour. I was just like, oh, at a bookstore, they're going to be like 20 people. I'm not going to put on my red dress. I'm going to put on like my jeans and like my big old boots and a turtleneck and be all bougie. And I got to the magic store, the magic spaceship that is An Unlikely Story. And there were like 300 people there. And I was sitting in the green room with Kim, who was like plying us with, whatever we wanted, basically her wand, her coffee, her gin, whatever.
Wine.
And wine, exactly. And I was thinking, oh my gosh, like I could hear the crowd outside the door. And I thought, I should have worn the red dress. Like, this is a typical night at Unlikely. Their events are so great. I highly recommend going to them online as well, because Kim, I'm curious about this, like, as somebody who's now running events online herself, do you feel like you're increasing your audiences now because of the online dimension?
I think we are. I mean, they're just people from everywhere who are able to, and a lot of people are saying, like, especially moms with kids who aren't always able to get out to our events. And we are, like, anybody pretty much, unless they live in the surrounding neighborhoods, they have to drive to us. So I found that one mom was like, this was just the best. It was the best event. I think that was the Rebecca Stead. She's like, I can be home and I actually feel like I can see more authors than I normally would going into the store, because it takes a lot to get everything, get everything together and get out at night and get in the traffic and deal with it. And so it's we do have a really loyal community of readers who come to our events. And one thing I've found from a lot of authors is they say we get a lot of really good questions, like really good, thoughtful questions. And we're just lucky. We're lucky the community that we're in.
Now you work it. I mean, you guys do it right. And so, I mean, from the author perspective, now I'm in this weird sort of pivot perspective of fangirling authors, and at the same time, like, knowing what it's like to be on that side of the signing table. And I know from both sides, you're doing everything right.
Yeah. So how are you doing, Jenna, at home? Like, you're not going out to bookstores and places, you're just in front of your lovely bookcases. I keep trying to see what you have on there.
My ego wall, those are all my books. It's like my one wall in my apartment where like all of my foreign editions are. Thank you for asking. I love to get out in front of people. I am a person who will drive over an old lady to get to a microphone. Like, I really love the mic. I love to meet readers. I love to talk to readers. I write books only to get out and talk to readers. So when I watched my events being canceled this summer, it was like watching the train board at Grand Central Station, where there was this one day where all the events were like cancel, 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 cancel. I must have had, like 25 events and they all crashed on one day.
Yeah, same.
And I know, and it's devastating. And I don't have a book coming out right now, but I have many friends who have books coming out this summer. And I just bristled at that. I said, no. Yeah. They have been working for 3, 5, 10 years on these books. Their reward is to get out among people. And I am just not going to let it happen that their books are going to fall down the well without making a sound. So we started The Blaze. And I was able to poach from my friends and my novelists, all of these fantastic creatives who came to work with me, like Kimberly and Joe, who's producing the segment, and Caroline Levitt, who's my co-founder, who would say, I'm going to get Alice Hoffman, or I'm going to go after Rick Moody. And then the next thing you know, like, we had Ann Patchett on earlier today in her bookstore Parnassus. And Caroline's so sweet, nobody can say no to her. So all of a sudden, we had all of these organizations, all of these bookstores, all of these authors helping us help writers reach readers and also keep indie bookstores afloat. I've never been busier in my entire life. I'm not leaving the house, but I'm working like 12 to 14-hour days, and I get up before those days to write before I start working on The Blaze. So
good.
It's a whole different, thank you.
Good, keep writing, Jenna.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy around here, but it's amazing. It's an amazing experience.
Jenna, we've gotten a question about your writing. People want to know if you're working on a new project, if you can find the space during this pandemic, the inspiration to be creative. And it sounds like you're juggling many, many balls in the air, and you can find that space to write. So then people are going to want to know, how is it that you're doing that? Because for so many writers, it's a struggle.
Thank you. I guess, I mean, for me, pre-pandemic, it was a struggle. And I think in a way I almost had too much time between events to write, and I didn't have an enforced schedule except for teaching my class at Grub Street once a week, and then getting on planes, 3 or 4 times a week to go and speak about the books I'd already written. But when I was at home, I would just slog around in my pajamas and be like, maybe I'll write today, but I don't know. I'm not really feeling that chapter. And my agent will call me, my wonderful French agent, and she'll say, Jenna, the more you do, the more you do. If you start writing a new book, like, I know you are so busy traveling and I don't want to take away from your travel time, but if you write something, you start something, you will finish something. You just need to schedule it in. And I was like, yeah. I'm getting on a plane. I can't do that. I can't write on planes. Was being very precious about it. And now I think, well, she's right. She's always right. She's like my mom, it's like, I really have something that I am working on and want to finish it. And so I need to do that before I go to work every day for The Blaze. So I'm working on a memoir. I'm just finishing it, knock on wood, about my Black Lab Woodrow. And I'm going to tell a story about Kim that will totally embarrass her, because she's actually in this memoir. So
I know you're going to make me cry.
I know I'm going to make you cry.
You're going to make me cry. Yep.
I love to make people cry. I'm a writer. I make people cry. But
yeah.
So this book is about my very, very old black lab who I lost in December, and he was 15. And the last 7 months of his life, he was not mobile. So as far as we could get was from my apartment to the bench across the street from my house. And so the memoir is called Woodrow on the Bench, because it's about how the 7 months of being pretty much sedentary, like I had canceled all my events. I had stopped traveling just so I could spend time with my very old dog. And that changed and reshaped my life in really unexpected ways. It connected me to people I didn't know, connected me to people I did know, and enabled me and forced me in a way to let people in a way that, as a sort of a professional introvert, as a writer, I hadn't done before. So I was either, out doing speaks, or I was in my house, like totally socked in. And Woodrow really opened me up. So the story that I'm going to tell about Kim is that I was supposed to launch the paperback of The Lost Family at Unlikely Story with Jane Green, who's one of my dearest friends, who will be on the Blaze at 1 this week, Friday, actually, dishing and gossiping. So lovely, fabulous, British, uber best-selling Jane was like, of course, darling girl, like I'll launch my book when you launch your paperback, and we'll have this event in this fabulous bookstore, and we'll put on false eyelashes, and and
her tequila bracelet.
and her she has a bracelet that is a flask that she carries tequila in for book tour. Got like on Amazon, and I will share the link with you guys. She's so fun, and Kim's so fun, and we had these dresses, like she had a caftan and I had a silver disco ball dress, and we had it all worked out. And I forced Kim to like make appetizers from my book in the store cafe. We had themed drinks, and so it was like this whole production.
It was fantastic.
And I'm sure it would have been, but right before this happened, Woodrow got really sick. He had heart failure. He went into heart failure. And so we rushed him to the dog hospital, and he was really at death's door for like a week while I was pumping medication into him that had all sorts of undesirous side effects. And I texted Jane and I said, I can't leave him, like he might die while I'm at this event. And even though it's my paperback launch and it's such a big deal, and I have forced poor Kim to do all this stuff for my event, I can't leave him. And I wrote to Kim and I said, I'm so sorry. Like, I just don't want him to die, when I'm not there. Like, I will never forgive myself. And Jane and Kim were so forgiving and so nice. So the day after this launch, this huge launch, which Jane did by herself, I'm lying on the floor with Woodrow, and he's just, pretty much unconscious. And I get this text from Kim, who's just like, would you like some of the food from your party that I stood you up for? And I was like, of course I would, but please tell me you're not going to drive all the way up here. And she was like outside my door, and she had appetizers from the launch that I had missed that were based on the menu from my book. And she bought in all of this food and came and sat on the floor with me and Woodrow. I had no makeup on. I had no eyebrows.
You looked amazing.
I looked like I had just been chemo. Like it was not good. And I had like the same clothes on that I had been wearing for days and days. So I'd been lying on the floor with my sick dog. And like Woodrow sort of perked up when she came in, because he was like, there's a lady. And I fed him some of the food, and I ate the food. And then Kim also had irises from her garden that she had grown herself and bought up. And it was like just being visited by like this angel person who then came and sat on the floor with us, forgave me for like skipping out on my own launch. And not only that, like drove an hour to bring me food. Like that's the kind of person Kim is, and that's the kind of store Unlikely is. It's really, really a community, and just the goodness of that gesture and the goodness of that moment was so amazing. So I put it in the memoir in the first chapter, which is called How to Ask for Help, because I'm not good at that. And Kim, I was like, what are the limits of the help that you can ask for? And you taught me there are no limits. So now I'm really like a little bit like,
I know.
But this is really why we love independent bookstores, because they're not just where you buy books, right? They're where you make friends and find community, and you're supported and you're loved.
And I know how it is to lose a dog that you just love like that. Like Woodrow he was just special. You could just tell. And that I got to meet him. He kind of stood up and he wagged his tail, and I sat down next to him, and it was just wonderful. And I think the best thing, I think you had like a book group meeting that day or something, Jenna, and we're supposed to make food. And see, now I wrangled my husband, I have a sneak ace in my pocket, he is a pastry chef. And we can't use flour at the bookstore because all of our stuff is gluten-free, so you can't use flour. So my husband Mark made the chocolate torte with the upside down and the Grand Marnier, and I'm like, this cannot go to waste. And I ate so much of it at the event. So I don't know what came into me that day, Jenna. It was just, I just care for you and feel for you going through that. Like it's hard to lose your best friend.
Thank you. Well, you brought Woodrow back to life. You did something right, because he lasted another 7 months, moving out to his bench, coming back in. But I really think like Woodrow, one of my friends, Lisa Borders, who's also a novelist, gave him the nickname Woodrow, the George Clooney of dogs, because he loves his ladies. And so like a beautiful lady came into the apartment and he's like dying. And then all of a sudden he was like, there's a lady, a beautiful lady with food. And all of a sudden he like Frankensteined up from the floor and like stumped over to Kim, and he was so happy to see her. And I mean, I ate the food that your husband prepared for like a week after that. It really was like getting the most wonderful infusion. And it really did teach me like there's no shame in asking for help. There's no shame in accepting help. I've never seen a bookseller, an events manager in my life without my full face on. You know, it would be like going outside naked, and like to have you come into my home and just deliver this goodwill to us is a lesson that I'll never forget. It was amazing.
Well, I couldn't believe you invited. I was just planning on just stopping by and dropping it off for you. I'm like, I'm not going to intrude on, her house, and she's in her pajamas, and you insisted coming in, and I got to see where you write in your beautiful apartment. It was beyond. It was very nice.
We have like mutual love society, obviously. Sorry.
Yeah, we do. We do.
Well, thank you for letting us share in that.
Yeah,
and thank you for telling us about all the reasons why An Unlikely Story is a special place for Kim and all the people who work there. And we are nearing the end of our time here on Authors Love Bookstores. And thank you so much, Jenna, for sharing your memories of this very special store with us. Kim, thank you so much for being here. It's a pleasure to meet you.
Thank you, Kimberly and Jenna, and thank you for all you're doing with the Almighty Blaze. I tried. I'm like, yes, I'm going to volunteer in the beginning, and then all of a sudden it's like, all right, this thing is huge and way beyond. It took off. It was so just incredible to see that. So you guys are blazing, and thank you for doing that.
So for all of our viewers, please check out An Unlikely Story online at anunlikelystory.com. And of course, to learn more about Jenna and her books, please go to jennablum.com. We'll see you back here next week for more of Authors Love Bookstores. Until then, keep reading and be well. Thank you.